Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dylbozer's Den. And what we happen to know is not all that glitters is gold, but today we're talking about something that is very gold. Imperial Triumphant's newest release, Goldstar, released through Century Media Records. This is the third release through Century Media for the band, starting with 2020's Alphaville and 2022's Spirit of Ecstasy. Boy, what a fucking band. Between dissonance and stage presence and pure avant-garde jazz influenced black metal, I guess, and that's in really big quotations. This band's a lot to take in if you're not interested in it, but man, once you're hooked on a band like this, you follow them to the ends of the fucking earth, blending many styles, black, death, even a little bit of grind, and of course there's a lot of jazz influence in this band's repertoire, but it's like making the guys from Portal listen to Bitches Brew, but also giving them Scum and the first Deicide record. There's a lot to this. There's a whole lot to this, and man, this is a great record. There's a lot of records that came out in the month of March, and this is just one of the really good ones, and arguably already one of the top two contenders for my album of the year. But let's dig into this a little bit. As I said, it's been about 3 years since the last album in 2022 with Spirit of Ecstasy. We have Zachary Ezrin on vocals, guitar, and orchestrations. We have Kenny Grahowski on drums, Steve Blanco on bass, keyboards, piano, and even some backing vocals on here. But you've also got a few guests on this record, which the band is no stranger to. You have Thomas Hake of Meshuggah, hope I pronounced your name correctly, on vocals of all things. As we know, Tomas is the brains behind the drums in Meshuggah and arguably the brains behind one of the most influential metal bands of the last 30 plus years. But anyway, he's going to be doing vocals on Lexington Delirium and Pleasure Dome. And then you have Dave Lombardo. I don't think I need to explain who Dave Lombardo is. I think if you're watching this, you probably fully understand. Dave Lombardo plays drums on Pleasure Dome. Can't wait to talk about that track, and we definitely will. And then you have Yoshiko Ohara on vocals on New York City. They're most known for the band Bloody Panda, which I've not spent a lot of time with, but each time I listen to an Imperial Triumphant album, I realize that this is a prior collaborator, and they've worked with the band on many different tracks and many different albums, and I keep wanting to go to the Bloody Panda catalog and take a listen. So hopefully I do that. On the recording, producing, and mastering side, you have Colin Marston handling the production, recording, and mixing of the album. I don't have to dig into his backlog of bands he's worked with and bands that he's in. We all know that he used to own Menegroth 1000 Caves, which is a studio that he once ran for many, many years and recorded and produced many, many albums. But we have the honor of this being the very last album that he recorded at the studio. The mastering of this album is just outstanding. We have our buddy Arthur Risk, who has been in Eternal Champion, Sumerlands. He's worked with such acts as Blood Incantation, Crypt Sermon, Dream Unending, but his mastering is stellar on this. This is, I think, the best sounding Imperial Triumphant has sounded on any of the albums that I've listened to of theirs and throughout the years. The artwork is yet again handled by Spignu Balak, hopefully I got that right, who has worked with the band as well as Behemoth, Carcass, Darkthrone, Ghost, and even Watain. His artwork is very Geiger-esque already, but it's really Geiger-esque on this lovely piece of art next to me here. Man, I've already prefaced it. This record is definitely something to behold, but let's dig right in. I will say it's a really dense sounding record. It's a dense sounding band, and I use that in the most positive term because this album just has so much going on in it, and you have to do multiple listens to catch everything. But when you catch all the nuance and all the effects and any and everything, like you really get drawn in with it, and there's so much going on. Being able to do one of these reviews and give this album justice is so hard because I want to just talk about everything. But we're going to start out with vocals. The one thing to think about is that Zachary or Zach is covering vocals, guitars. He's also doing some of the orchestrations on the album. This is the best Zach's vocals have sounded to me with every other release that they've done, and it seems like he gets better with every new release. I don't think it's just the mastering or the mixing on this. He just sounds much more confident, much more powerful on this. Maybe a lot more shows underneath the belt to kind of get it in tune with it. Maybe he stepped up his performance in the studio as well. This album definitely seems like a turning point for the band with how they're going about things, even with, you know, some tracks that I probably won't spend as much time diving into, such as like New York City, which is a grindcore track with these great riffs all over it and those great vocals from Yoshiko on there, like blending all in with the vocal effects. And then you've got the title track, Goldstar, which is just like an intro piece halfway through the record that intros the back half of the record. But vocally, this album is just covered head to toe with Zachary's just really powerful presence. You obviously have Tomas guesting on a couple tracks as well that I mentioned. So there's a lot of vocal effects, vocal layering all over this album. You know, the band is not afraid to experiment with any and everything. It's also an experience listening to all that. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Vocals are great. We know what we're getting. He's done a great job, but let's talk about why we're here, which are riffs. Riffs there are plenty of on this fucking record. You know, you've got the opening track, Eyes of Mars, the opening riff after all the effects and soundscapes that are going on. The opening riff at 24 seconds in is fucking bonkers. You've also got a lovely lead break at around 3 minutes and 13 seconds in. That is very alien sounding, very jazzy. You know, I'm kind of a dum-dum when it comes to jazz, maybe even a little bit like Alan Holdsworth phrasing in there. It sounds good to me. Then you go on to Gomorrah Nouveau, the opening riff of that, which is at 26 seconds. And then it returns at 3 minutes and 2 seconds in, and it's just monstrous. To Lexington Delirium, which has a fantastic solo at 3 minutes and 55 seconds in. So I think you're understanding what I'm getting at with Zachary is vocals, guitars, solos even. And this is a 3-piece band. It's like the rush of dissonant blackened death grind. There's a couple more riffs I really wanted to bring out in here. Hotel Sphinx with this almost Zeppelin-esque riff at 47 seconds in. I'm sure it's just a syncopated jazz riff or lick of some sort, but it definitely sounds like Zeppelin to me. But in that same track at 2 minutes and 2 minute 1, wherever it is, you get a Morbid Angel style riff, which just decimates everything, right? We all love Morbid Angel, at least certain albums we all really love. Then you get to Rot Moderne. 22 seconds in is tremendous and makes me think of Burnt by the Sun a lot. Pleasure Dome. At 125, it hits like a weightier Meshuggah. And then you get the last track, Industry of Misery, at 1 minute and 5 seconds in. You have this great, just chaotic, slidey, chromatic, stomping monster of a riff. As I mentioned before, the band is a 3-piece. I'm very biased when it comes to any bands that have very good bass players or good bass sound or you know, the bass players doing interesting stuff. So I always lean towards that, being a bass player myself. But man, Steve's bass playing is fucking great. I can't even begin to describe everything that he does on this record that I love so much. There's so many tasteful uses of effects and just note choices and grooves and when to lock in with the guitars and when to not lock in with Kenny, the drummer. It's absolutely astonishing. And the more I listen to this album, the more shit I hear with the wah all over this album that Steve's doing. And there's even some like sub-octave stuff going on with the higher harmony and just craziness. A lot of reverbed bass and so on and so forth. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent just to kind of gush on how much I enjoy the bass playing on this record. But let's just get into a couple things that Steve does that really stands out. Eye of Mars, you've got a bass break at around 2 minutes, 21 seconds in. His playing really feels off the cuff and freeform, to use some phrasing I don't normally use. He kind of sounds like a weird blending of like Geezer Butler and Jaco Pastorius, with note choices and how he grooves and where he locks in, and has these almost little lead breaks he does without getting away from the idea of the song. Then we go on to Gomorrah Nouveau. 3 minutes and 2 seconds in, when I mentioned the riff from before, the riff comes back, but the bass that's playing under it is just cutting through in these really nasty stabs. Rot Modern, you have this bass and drum intro that locks in. And interestingly enough, it makes me think of a track off of Black Flag's Damaged, No More, except this is a little bit more technically challenging than that intro. Then we get the Pleasure Dome, and there's this great bass freak out solo at 3 minutes and 43 seconds in. Industry of Misery, you have this clean, verbed out bass that I mentioned that's all over the intro of this. I could talk about the bass playing in this record for hours at length, but we are going to talk about Steve's rhythm section partner, which is Kenny. I don't know how they're keeping time on this thing. I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know how he's bending to all the twists and turns. Steve and Kenny really lock in when a death metal or black metal adjacent band of this nature has a rhythm section that locks in and does really interesting things that heavy music, metal music, hardcore punk, extreme metal music, extreme music of any sort doesn't just have to be just formulaic. You've got players on here that know how to play and make things interesting and make things exciting for one another, because I'm sure they're in their practice space and they're just all kind of like vamping off one another and getting excited about it. Couple points for the drum performance from Kenny. Lexington Delirium, there's a great double kick pattern that's used at 1 minute and 46 seconds in that is just really stellar and helps the song out a lot. It really makes that spot in particular just stick out even more. 2 minutes and 27 seconds in the same song. It just shows kind of a masterclass of how good of a drummer Kenny is with the different type of performance he's showing on that section. And then we move on to Hotel Sphinx. At around 24 seconds in, you have this great bass and drum groove that always sticks out to me. Simple drum and bass groove that, again, pushes the song even further. Then we get to Rot Modern. At 2 minutes and 4 seconds in, you get this particularly nasty riff that's going on with these bonkers fucking drums under it. It sticks out to me every time I hear it. And we're going to finish this off on the drum end with Pleasure Dome. My God, this is probably one of my favorite songs on the record. It is a drummer song. You've got Kenny and Dave Lombardo in this thing, and they're just going at each other. Hell, you even got Tomas doing vocals on this track. So you've got 3 drummers on one track. And I'm not convinced that Tomas isn't doing some drum stuff on this track, but it could just be Kenny and Dave all over this. 3 minutes and 2 seconds in, it just starts out with this great drum break with what I interpret as a samba feel. It's almost like they start layering. It's very Neurosis-esque and tribal in the way it's done. And at around 4 minutes and 18 seconds in, it does feel like all the drummers are playing at once. It could be Kenny layering a lot of this stuff, but I think it is very much at least Kenny and Dave with their parts layered and how they're working with one another. Fantastic fucking track. What a tremendous release from this band. This is the shortest of the last 3 records they've put out. And man, does it feel that way. I probably have listened to it 2 to 3 times in one day and not getting tired of it. And it shows. It's going to be hard for this not to end up in my top 5 by the end of the year. Goldstar, Imperial Triumphant. What a great fucking record. And along with this album, as I mentioned, the month of March had a ton of great releases in it. I just wanted to highlight a few of them before we signed off here. I have Wake's The Return of Magic. You know, we did a whole episode on this. I got to see them on album release night. This is going to be a contender for album of the year. Return of Magic is tremendous. You've got Cradle of Filth with The Screaming of the Valkyries. First release from the band for a while. This is a really straightforward one. Loved it. The vocals are really dry. I really like that a lot. I get to hear some natural nuance from Danny. A completely different album. We go to Whitechapel's Hymn of Dissonance. The band's really taking it back to some of their roots, really old school, a lot of brutality, just a really straightforward, heavy, knuckle-dragging, Neanderthalic deathcore, death metal record. We move on to Deaf Heaven's Lonely People with Power. You know this band. You know what you're in for. You get a little bit of nuance on each given record. I've been a fan since Roads of Judah. Another great album from a band that really knows no bounds. But anyway, that's what we've got for March. Thank you guys for listening as always. Thank you for humoring me. Hopefully you enjoy Goldstar by Imperial Triumphant. If you do, let us know. If you don't, let us know. If there's anything you'd like me to review next or check out in the coming months, we got a great year of releases coming up. Let me know. Check us out on all the socials that we have. Riff Worship Pod. You know where to check us out. Until next time, thank you guys.